All right, hello everyone, and welcome to something completely different. In the month of February, there is something on Kickstarter called Zine Quest, and it's the third iteration now of Zine Quest. And I took it upon myself to ask some creators if they would like to be interviewed for to talk about their creations, talk about their games, some prior games, what got them into Zine Quest, and things like that. These are all indie creators who are walking a different path than your regular Dungeons and Dragons or your regular dungeon crawl type thing. So first, we got someone who I'm really interested in talking to. When he told me about his game, this is something that I never even thought of existed. This is like underground of the underground is what I thought this would be. But today we're going to talk to Andi Lennon, who is the creator of Packing Bondage Nuns from Dimension Sex. Andy, thanks for joining me. That's a mouthful, but I think we're going to have something really cool to talk about today.
Hey, John. Thanks for having me. I think we were going to abbreviate it to just PPBN, because even PPBN FDS, that's still a mouthful.
Yes, it is. So before we get into that, I want to kind of know a little bit about you. Why don't you just kind of tell me about yourself first, and just a little bit of your history with gaming, and how you started and how you got into actually creating games.
It started pretty early. When I was a kid, when I was very young, my mother was a librarian, and she couldn't afford childcare on that kind of salary. So every day after school, I'd just be sat in the library, waiting for her to finish work. And must have been about 1984 or 85 or so. I started to discover those fighting fantasy game books, like the Warlock of Firetop Mountain, and then the Lone Wolf series by Joe Dever and things like that. And so I fell pretty deeply into just scouring the young adult section of the library for things like that. And I guess that was my first experience of non-traditional narrative or ludic narrative. And from there, I had these Canadian neighbours. I was living in a small town in Queensland at the time, and they had just moved in, and I'd made friends with my neighbour, and his elder brother was playing an old TSR game called Star Frontiers. And so I got to sit in on a game of that, and it was, I don't know, it was a fairly revelatory experience. All I wanted for Christmas that year was anything with TSR printed on it. So I got the red box, the Frank Mensa edition. That would have been about 87 for Christmas that year, and that really kicked it all off. Alongside games like Talisman and Hero Quest and things like that, it came around at the time that a lot of us people who were that way inclined were into. And then I just started to dig for things. I was always interested in self-produced or self-published media and sort of outsider media. I think I discovered my first fanzine at this little hole-in-the-wall record store called Rock and Roll Warehouse in about 1992. And it was this Finnish zine packed to the brim with interviews with underground and demo scene death metal bands and black metal bands and things like that. And the artwork and the presentation, the cut and paste layout, the cool spiky fonts and the skulls around the perimeter and all that sort of stuff. I just was immediately drawn to that aesthetic. And so fairly soon after that, obviously, I was inspired to start. You went through these magazines, and rather than you would read about all these interesting bands, all these interesting creators, and you had to write to them physically and send away for their tapes or whatever. And so that might sound like a huge hassle to people these days, but what it gave you back then was, rather than just being a passive consumer, you had a hobby that you could engage with. And so I just fell in love with that. And obviously then the next step was to do my own zines. And I guess now we're at the point in my life where those two interests have converged, the gaming and the zine creation. I think Zine Quest is an amazing initiative that would inspire people to take a punt on being part of something bigger and being ferried by the momentum of that in a way that has brought out a whole bunch of really cool stuff, and also a great sense of community amongst the RPG hobby.
Yeah, I completely agree. I mean, I think there's something really special about, so we met on the RPG Zine fan page or whatever for Facebook, and that is a really cool place to meet very like-minded people. You could, like, for instance, you could go on there and ask a specific question about your book, and they're going to be 100% honest with you, and they'll even, help you if you want to expand on it, things like that. That's a really cool, spot for people to meet and for people to help create with. The punk rock, or the store that you were talking about reminds me a lot of the store from, like, the band Death, where they would all hang out and just fucking sit in the basement and just, listen to records and shit all day. I like that. But a couple key words that come to mind specifically for Pistol Packing Bondage Nuns is, we talked about it, punk rock, gonzo, sexy, and blasphemous. I think all of those are perfect. Yeah.
Well, the thing, the origins of it was, it kind of started out as a joke. We were just a group of my friends were chatting online because we had this chat channel where we would discuss, because we were an RPG group, and we would have our weekly sessions and stuff like that. And I can't remember exactly how it came up, but the phrase something like gun-toting savage sisters or something like that came up. And I was immediately like, we should make a game of that. And then straight away, Marty came up with some imagery, and Richard came up with some imagery, and I started writing. And within 4 or 5 days, we had the whole premise locked down. We had some preliminary artwork, and we went, oh, well, shit, it looks like we're going to do this. And it just sort of, obviously it's sort of second nature to draw upon that kind of attitude that sort of permeates the whole thing. But another huge aspect of it was, I think it's a cathartic exercise, given that, like, the state of the world that we're in now, and the fact that, like, people say that we're beyond satire at this point, which I kind of agree with.
Yeah.
But, by giving people a way to sort of engage with it, and embody those roles, and just find a way to to make light of it, but also be informed about it at the same time, and have a sort of a cathartic release. It's probably quite healthy during these weird late days of capitalism.
Yeah, I completely agree. I'm just watching the picture scroll by. Unfortunately, you can't see the pictures yet until the video goes live, but I'm just watching, like, right now. Sister Clitora, Atomic Order, Everything is Holy, Even the Bomb. And the artwork in this is one of the things that caught my eye. I mean, you posted the cover, well, just a little tag plate that you put on Kickstarter, on the fan page, on the RPG Zine page, and I was instantly drawn to it. That neon pink, the nun with the guns, and the sexy lingerie, and it's like everything that shouldn't be sexy about this is completely and utterly sexy about it. And so as soon as you put the link up there, I clicked on it, and, notify me later. I definitely want to see that. So when you were interested in the interview, immediately I wanted to talk to you, because your book is one of the books that caught my eye first about Zine Quest. And I had heard Zine Quest is almost like, say, the Super Bowl in America of the zines. I mean, there's got to be at least maybe 300 or 400 different zines going up, and
it's getting bigger every year as well.
And this year, I can only imagine, with all the time that people had on their hands, that put one or two in the can, and let's put the best one up on Zine Quest. And I just think it's really cool, man. And that's one of my questions for you was, why Zine Quest? Like, what about Zine Quest made you want to join in the initiative and not just maybe release it, later on or even prior?
I think ultimately, in a pragmatic sense, it was just because it gave us a deadline. It was like we could sort of iterate and philosophize upon what this thing's going to be in circles for an eternity, unless we actually have like a line that we're running towards. And it just seemed like there was a concept that we came up with like in about August of last year. And I was like, well, if we're going to do this, Zine Quest is probably going to hit around February again. And it's an exciting time of year for me as well, because I'm like you, I've been going around clicking on notify me later, because there's so many exciting projects to keep track of.
Oh yeah.
I think it was, so I guess the reason for that is twofold. It was a deadline that we would be forced to adhere to. And then once it was out there in the world, that makes it real. And that makes us beholden to, finishing this and creating the best product that we can for people. And the other part of it was just obviously wanting to be a part of the wider creative community. And I think that it's fine to work in isolation, but like an event like this, and the OSR scene in particular is also already incredibly collaborative. People are really helpful. There's a lot of cross-pollination of ideas, and there's a lot of, you can be cynical and say it's creators making for creators, but I don't see a problem with that. I think, it's this huge melange of ideas that are blossoming, and that's why it's so fertile. That's why so many new ideas are coming out of it, and that's why it's so much more of an appealing prospect than another 5th edition module from Wizards of the Coast, which is just, which is kind of it's a fine product, I suppose, but it's a corporate product, and it's had all of its charisma and rough edges sanded off so that it can be as universal as possible, I suppose. And that's something we just not at all about. So just the inspiration of being a part of something bigger than ourselves, being ferried by that momentum, and hoping to meet some cool people along the way, like I've done with you.
Yeah, I appreciate that, man, and I appreciate your answer of it. It giving you a deadline, because I know for me, if there's no deadline, no end in sight, so to speak, it's never going to come out, because I can always nitpick something that I can try to do better, or that I want to do better, or I might even think too hard and throw the whole damn idea away. You know what I mean?
There's always a stage in every project, every creative project I've been in, and it's usually towards the end where you just doubt everything and you start to hate everything you've done. And so they say no art is ever finished; it's just abandoned. But we want to get to a point and I think we are at the point where we're going to create something that's really it's the sort of game we would want to play first and foremost. So I think that you can't go wrong when you're following your passions like that.
Yeah, and we talked briefly about I get shunned a lot, and it's not like out in the open, but when I tell people that I am not a fan of Dungeons and Dragons, they kind of are like, so okay, then what do you play? And there's many things that I play. I like to play Call of Cthulhu. There's a game called 10 Candles. There's just a bunch of different things that I like to play that aren't necessarily a dungeon crawl. And that's totally cool, and I appreciate the people that make the stuff for the dungeon crawl. It's just not my cup of tea, so to speak. But the thing...
I think all of us would admit, though, that we're standing on the shoulders of giants, in that if D&D hadn't laid the foundations, then we wouldn't have that framework to iterate upon and to take as a jumping off point. I just think that after 40 plus years, there's an evolution has taken place, and there's just more to choose from, and role playing can be so much. It doesn't have to be this systems heavy, combat focused, a sort of power fantasy. Although, if you want that in Pistol Packing Bondage Nuns, you can have it. But there's plenty of avenues to explore as far as where the hobby can take you. In terms of communal storytelling, and in terms of almost even a reflection of who you are. There's a thing that I'm putting in the introduction to the book, which is most books have a little blurb about what is role playing, and it just says Pistol Packing Bondage Nuns, like most role-playing games, is a mirror, in that it reflects what you bring to it. But it's also a funhouse mirror, in that the images you see are either going to be amusing or grotesque. And that, too, is up to you.
I like that. I like that a lot. So you talk a little bit about, is there any kind of backstory behind, like a little bit of lore behind Pistol Packing Bondage Nuns? Is it like a setup for a story, or is it just like, here is a world you can immerse yourself in, here's everything you know to play, create your own world?
It has elements of both. So I'm a big fan of emergent world building and emergent storytelling. But the main thing that we started out with was this was a parody of the lunatic right, of the Christian right, of the weird, twisted ideology that seems to have subsumed, mainstream religions. And so we thought it would be funny to just lean into that totally. So in the game, you play as a cadre of latex-clad avenging angels who have been summoned from Dimension 6 because the world is fallen away from the word of God and has fallen under the thrall of like secular atheists and people who vaccinate their children and people who eat vegan food and just all these straw man enemies that currently are sort of hot button topics. And this was just a way to engage with it in a way that was fun. It's not entirely political though, because, we don't there's still sinister cultists and there are still demonic forces at play and there are still mysteries to be unraveled. There's, although there's a lot of mechanics that we've focused on, when I say a lot of mechanics, few mechanics, but the focus of them is on this kinetic, smooth, flowing thing where players have a lot of agency to determine what they want to do without being hindered by a whole bunch of systems and restrictive class parameters and things like that. But as far as the world building is concerned, there's just acres and acres of emergent tables and settings. The game, the initial book comes with an introductory adventure called The Scourge of the Vaccinators, which is where a bunch of evil mask advocates are trying to vaccinate people. And and there's a sinister secret behind it all, obviously.
Yeah.
Bill Gates is probably involved. I don't know. But as the nuns, you have to get in there and get to the bottom of it. And then as one of our stretch goals, that we're working on a second module now called Twilight of the Gay Frogs, and that's where there are some. There's a tower that's emitting 5G rays. And it's next to a vegan food factory, and the runoff from the vegan food and the 5G rays are mutating the frogs and making them good with colors. And obviously that won't stand. So,
oh god, I love it.
That's the kind of vibe we're going for. Firmly tongue in cheek, but at the same time, we do have the courage of our convictions in pointing out how ludicrous this kind of stuff is.
Yeah, like you said, it's a fun house mirror. Sometimes it's funny, sometimes it's grotesque. Yeah, and if you can't, and a lot about comedy, so to speak, I would say that's very comedic. A lot about telling a joke is a lot of the truth. So, 5G making the frogs gay. I can't even count on my fingers and toes how many times I've actually heard that come out of people's mouths.
Yeah, I mean, and that's the thing we're up against. This whole we are beyond satire.
Yeah.
We just hope that people can have a bit of fun with it. And we want it to be an entertaining read. I mean, my background is primarily in writing. And so I'm doing the graphic design and the systems and the writing primarily. And I want it to be a book that, well, obviously we want people to play this game, but I also want it to be a book that's fun to read. That people are going to get a kick out of the art, they're going to kick out of the prose and things like that, because I'm sure I'm not alone in that, I buy a lot of RPGs, I buy a lot of RPG zines, and I don't get to run them all. It's just the logistics of getting all these games to the table is one thing. So I appreciate the ones where I just enjoy it as a piece of literature as well. So we're hoping to tick that box as well as make it a fun system for people to play.
Absolutely, 100%. One of the things that kind of got me into zines is, we talked about Morkborg. Obviously, that's not even, it's maybe if you were to put all the words in it on two pieces of printer paper, it would probably fit. And then the rest is just art that is absolutely beautiful that I would love to, there's a picture of a queen holding a king's head in her hand. And like, I would love to just have that in a frame on my wall. I mean, I think it's beautiful. The artwork in there is absolutely beautiful. And like I said before, one of the things that caught my eye is all the artwork. And when you kept sending me artwork, like I even showed my wife and I said, look at how fucking cool this looks. Like, look at how fucking cool this is.
I'm really lucky that I've got some very talented friends. Like I dabble in art myself, but I'm not that flash. And like I said, it just happened organically. As soon as the idea came about, like they're two of my close friends that we game with all the time, and they were just onto it. Like, and it helps that it's a fun thing, you know. Like,
Yeah.
it's I think they're having a blast drawing these things, and I can't wait for you guys to see some of the creations we've come up with. Like some of the we have a whole swathe of sacred relics and sanctified weapons. Like Richie just gave me the draft for a flamethrower. I think I've got it here. I don't know if you'll be able to see it, but it's this is going to be called Saint Elmo's Fire, and it has it's the Pope's hat.
Oh yeah,
sort of like, yeah. This is just an early draft, but we have a whole stack of these.
that's so
There's one
cool.
called the Bible Basher, which is just an enormous Bible made of and a hammer. There's like we're throwing around ideas last night. There's a gun that shoots bear traps.
Oh my god!
Like, so we want to have fun with it. You know, one of the elements that I think is going to be fun is the super sexy stud system, which is just basically a way of making combat more kinetic. There's nothing worse, I find, in a role playing game where, like, I mean, I don't like games that are too combat heavy to start with. But I especially don't like it when it's like, oh, okay, roll to initiative, roll to hit. I have to cross-check these 15 tables, da-da-da-da-da. Your options of what you're going to do are very limited. With elements like the sexy stunt system, basically, if you want to backflip off a helicopter and do a splits kick while firing a full clip out of a set of Uzis, you can do it in one roll.
Nice.
Right? But you have to spend a point of your piety. Piety is like a finite stat that you have, which you can call upon to draw for divine inspiration, which will allow you to perform things like that, which will allow you to access rerolls and also miracles and things of that nature. So it just keeps things rolling and smooth, and it puts the emphasis on the players to narrate the action rather than reacting to the situation that's presented to them, which I think keeps people more engaged.
I agree with that 100%. And that brings me to one of the questions I wrote down. Like before we started, I said I just have a couple other notes that I want to write down, and I'll be right there. One of them was ease of play. So we talked a little bit about, we played as teenagers, and then I stopped from probably 15 to 30 and forgot everything that I had ever learned. And what I did learn was Dungeons and Dragons, and I never really got a chance to get a really good experience because of all the rules lawyers in the team. And then, what got me back into playing was the quarantine, being bored. And then I saw Mike Mason play the paper trace on Call of Cthulhu on YouTube. And I was like, holy shit, this is fucking awesome. I love the Cthulhu mythos. Didn't know there's been a game for it for years and years and years. And B, I don't have anything else better to do. Let's get this quick start guide and get it down. And then that took me down a rabbit hole of just a million different games I never thought of. Talked about Morkborg, Mothership. Mothership's another one of the ones I haven't played yet. I'm dying to play. The book uses every single square inch of it, and it's absolutely beautiful. I wish I would have bought 2 copies, one for the table to play with and one for the bookshelf.
A new one just landed called Necronautilus, which looks fantastic. It's like it's like a cross between Mothership and Merkborg, but like it's got this amazing mechanic whereby you have these power words, and each time you use them, you have to remove a letter from the word and construct a new word out of that, and then whatever that word means to you, you extrapolate at the table. It's really some really creative stuff. I mean, for myself. Very similar experience to you. I played from the age of like 8 to the age of about 15. And a lot of the reason I stopped was you mentioned rules lawyers. I kind of had some toxic mindsets in the group I was playing with. A lot of these people that I was playing with, they were your traditional, like, it was like a power fantasy. It was like It was very sort of stock, slay the dragon, but also it could get very weirdly misogynistic, and it just like, and there was bullying involved, and you know what it's like, you know, nerd toxicity and nerd rage is the worst kind of toxicity. They've just had so long to hone it to this buffed chrome gleam and razor sharp finish. But so I stopped doing that, and like I said, you know, obviously I went through that phase where like, oh, this is a bit, you know, because it's not like it is now. I mean, back then in the late 80s and the early 90s, it was still, even the mainstream options like Dungeons and Dragons were very niche.
Mm-hmm.
And so I got into doing music and playing in bands and things like that, and stopped for a long time. And it was maybe about two years or so ago that I started to get back into the hobby through some of the modern board games, and then started to think about role playing again. And that's when I noticed, by going online and having a look around, there was this thing called the OSR, and some of the titles looked really interesting. And so by diving into that, and also having all this time during quarantine and using tools like Roll20 and things like that, we've been playing all year, and it really has not only helped me recapture a part of myself that was really vital, I think, and that I'd let atrophy for so long, and filled that space with like drugs and alcohol and things instead. And I just think it's been enormously beneficial. It's helped me create a whole bunch of new friends, and it's led to fun, creative endeavors like this. I think our experience is going to be almost universal in a way. There's a lot of people returning to it. It was almost like the perfect storm of the pandemic and this whole range of new titles coming out, and people reaching a certain age. I think I'm of an age now where I'd hesitate to call it a midlife crisis, but like you go through that period where you look back on all the things that you were into during those very formative, imprint vulnerable stages of your youth and your adolescence, and you realize that they're like little chips of amber inside you. They're unchanged. They're still there to be revisited. And it's been a lot of fun doing so.
Yeah. Yeah, I think so too. I think not only was it the rules lawyers, but I think it was also, that's about the time I started chasing down girls and you know, wanting to experience something a little different. So we talked about how easy it is for combat, but to kind of expand on my experience a bit, I don't have very much of it. So for a new person running a game, how easy is it for you to learn and to play with your friends? Is it going to take a lot of studying, a lot of number crunching, or no?
Absolutely not. Although I will say that it is kind of aimed at people who are already at least knee deep, or at least testing the waters of the role playing. It assumes some prior knowledge of what a role playing game entails. But as far as the complexity of it, we are deliberately leaving a lot of agency and a lot of leeway in the hands of the players and the games master. The sessions that I enjoy playing the most, and when I run a game, I am loath to let a line ball ruling get in the way of the narrative. So we're going to leave a lot of decisions up to the games master. We're going to provide them with the tools in which to tell the story, and use it up to their best discretion in order to sort of make any judgment calls when it comes to and obviously that's what the dice are there for. You know what I mean? Like the two main systems that we have in place are a simple roll under for tests. There are 4 stats: faith, purity, piety, and poise. Instead of hit points, you have sex appeal, and then you have your your piety stat, which is something that you can burn, similar to the spell burn mechanic in Dungeon Core Classics. And so I think we've given people a robust framework that can account for a whole bunch of different scenarios. The other main mechanic is similar to something you would have experienced in Call of Cthulhu. It's a set of skills with a roll under percentage, and there are various levels of success on that thing. And so we generally want, but I've even been toying with dropping that. I think it will make it to the final part because we've done a lot of work on it, and because it broadens the scope of the game. I think ultimately, and Merkborg is a great example of this. There's 4 stats. everything can be checked on a roll under one of those 4 stats, or a DC check. With our game, we want to have that combat element, but also we want to, having played Cthulhu and games like that, we want to involve the sort of the mystery element. Like, if there are these conspiracies afoot, before you get to the point where you blow them up sexily, you need to find out what's going on. So there's going to be a little bit of investigation. There's going to be a little bit of, and so I think we're going to try and include tips on running NPCs, because that's a huge part of the game for a GM, and just give any prospective game masters the confidence to just wing it, because that's when the best stuff occurs. I think when people are off the rails a little bit, out of the safety zone. I learned that fairly early on when I was preparing games, and I would do like immense amounts of prep, and then immediately the players would take a left turn. And you can either become frustrated and stymied by that, or you can roll with it and tell the story together. And so I hope that's what we're creating a system that enables that. The framework is there so that you have a robust enough set of rules so that there won't be too many ambiguities. But in the case of ambiguities, I think the ludicrous premise of the game itself means that anything goes. So just go fucking hog wild with it, man.
Awesome, dude. Awesome. I'm really liking what I'm hearing. And so you showed us some artwork that is not yet in the book. Are you finished completely, except for art, or okay?
We're constantly creating new stuff. So we've given ourselves several months in order from completion date until it's published and printed and in everybody's hands, because we've just started playtesting in earnest. So the idea is that basically we had all these ideas that were great ideas. It was really fun to create, and then when we bring them to the table, that's when even more interesting stuff comes out. So there's there's ideas that are going to be refined. There's ideas that are going to be added to it, and as is the case with any ongoing project, I think we want to keep adding stuff to it as long as we're able, without overburdening it to the point where it becomes unwieldy. So, and another one of the pledge tiers that we have is, if you pledge at $100, we will include you as one of the nuns. You'll get a portrait of yourself in full color as the nun. You'll have a whole stat block, and you'll be included in the game. That's for one lucky true believer. I'll be shocked if anyone actually does it. But,
hey man, I was just thinking to myself, I wonder how I would look as a sexy nun.
Just a mock-up sweat. It was, I think you'd carry it quite well. But so as far as the content is concerned, it's still evolving. It's still ongoing. We have enough now, but we also have stretch goals where we're looking at adding additional art, additional pages, and things like that. And because our tiers, our stretch goals are very modest, I hope that we reach that, because and then again, even after the campaign's over, there might be further iteration for a second edition. Who knows? Or we might move on to the next thing. But I think all of us are quite addicted to the process at this point, and so because the act of creating it is a lot of fun for us. The finished product is important, obviously, but it's the act of making it that's our jam, So we just want to keep hacking away at it, like.
Yeah, I can tell by the way that you speak about it that it's a lot of fun to you guys right now. It's a lot of fun, and I'm sure that there's stressors there, but I always find that brainstorming when you're brainstorming, anything is a probability, right? Anything can happen. Someone said, hey, let's make a game about pistol packing nuns that come from Dimension Sex. Yes, let's do that. That is a possibility. When does the project go live?
We're going to be going live on February 4th. And so we're going to be live for 2 weeks as per the parameters of Zine Quest. And then we're hoping to deliver, I think it's 4 or 5 months out. And that includes the fully printed books and things like that. And we intend to stay in full communication with the community throughout the entire process. As you said, brainstorming is fun. It is fun, but we're at the point now where we are really sort of knuckling down and harnessing all that sort of stuff into a finished product. And I'm at a similar stage with another project that I'm working on at the moment, and that's crunch time, and that's a part of any project. But we wanted to err on the side of caution, with making sure that we have enough time to deliver something that's not just a throwaway joke, that is that is a lot of fun, that is sexy and cartoonish, and satirical. But there's also has it's a game that you're going to want to play, hopefully.
Yeah, and I think that you go live on February 4th. I think that with the modest goal that you wish to get, I don't see why you wouldn't get that in the first couple hours, to be honest. This game, I think, is going to be one of the bigger ones because it's not your regular dungeon crawl type game. It's something different, like a Morkborg, like a Mothership, something that I haven't necessarily seen. Something I might not necessarily seen, but I think that what I mean by that is maybe not on the scale of there's a bunch of people making scenarios and things for the game, but I think that this is one of those that is going to stand out from the rest of the crowd. Which is
like to think so.
Which is great. I really think that. I mean, I'm personally going to be backing it. That's for sure. And like I said, I'd like to get one that's for the table and one that's for the bookshelf. So,
Awesome.
Speaking of that, what kind of tiers are we looking for backers?
There's there's just 4. There's one that's just called where you tithe us $1. Tithing saves your soul $1 just because you want to give it to us, just because the next one is just your PDF. So that will be delivered via DriveThruRPG. It'll be linked to your DriveThruRPG account, and that will be delivered prior to the print version, which is a print on demand. And so we've arranged it so that the physical tier also includes the PDF, and also all orders include free shipping to anywhere in the world. So we factored that in, and we still think we're going in pretty low cost wise. So we're in this to cover our costs. We're not in here. We're not trying to make enough money so we can all buy dune buggies.
Yeah.
We just want to get this project out there, and really for us, like I've been involved in another Kickstarter previously as writer, but this is the first one that I'm helming for myself. So we're keeping it modest in our ambitions, just because we want to. We want to be part of this process. We want to engage with the community. We want to, be part of that. The whole festival of Zine Quest. It's not like, I don't know, man. It's like 20 Australian dollars, including postage for the print. So that's about 15 US, I think, maybe 14 US. And that's going to be 60 pages, color cover.
Wow.
So, I don't know. I can't say right now. We have no real expectations of how it's going to go. Everybody who comments, everybody who clicks to follow, every single little thing, every piece of feedback we get is really heartening. And being able to reach out and talk to somebody like you, who's obviously passionate about these kind of projects, that's really awesome. And we appreciate every moment of it. So all we can do right now is just get our heads down and keep working on the project, and knock on wood that we're going to fund. And then anything else after that is a bonus.
Absolutely. And you kind of hit on it a little bit earlier. Do you think that if it does go over your goal and exponentially, that we might see a version 2, or maybe a zine of different scenarios, things like that?
Well, as I said, there's already a second module.
Oh, wow.
As a stretch goal, the Twilight of the Gay Frogs.
Yeah, the Gay Frogs. Yeah.
And then there's another stretch goal, which is going to include standees and screensavers and posters and things like that. Whether or not we can factor those into the physical printing, it's still something that we're working out, and that's really going to depend on how much comes in. If it exceeds our wildest expectations, I know that we'd be up for adding more, because like I said, the lack of ideas is not a problem. It's something that just keeps it's so fun to work on that we keep coming up with ludicrous shit. And I'd like to, although we're sort of pitching it as a game that's perfect for one shots or 3 to 4 session mini campaigns, I think a grander narrative would be good to work on in the future. And obviously we'd love to, with the cool art and stuff like that, I'd love to do a hardcover full color. And that's something we would look at in the future. But with the parameters of Zine Quest, obviously we're beholden to that, which is cool because, it puts everybody on a level playing field, and it means you're focused on the content, and it makes it affordable. That's one of the best things about zines. It's affordable. Although living in Australia, the postage is fucking mental. It's mental, man. Like I buy a lot of these things, and I'm a physical media guy. Like
me too.
I like books, I can't be sitting there reading a PDF off the screen for hours and hours. My eyes, and so the postage to Australia is crazy. So that's why we're going through Drive-Thru RPG for fulfillment. They'll be mailing out all the books from the UK and the US locations, and that means we can keep a lid on the distribution prices, because I think I got some DCC stuff the other day, and it was the book itself was $30 and the postage was $35.
Wow.
I ordered what else was it? Seekers Beyond the Shroud, and which was a lovely leather hardback. And even that it was like $60 for postage. And so I just realized that I can't sustain, I really have to be a bit more selective about it. But during Zine Quest, that goes out the window, because I'm going to be backing. I want to see all the cool shit that comes out. I feel like, it's almost part of the contract. If you're in it, you're in it. And it's not just for your project, it's for everybody's.
Yeah, dude. Yeah. And so, I want to talk about one more game that's not part of Zine Quest, because it kind of piqued my interest here. Machina Arcana. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, man. Machina Arcana is a board game. It is put out by a company out of Croatia called Indi Games. The designer, his name is Jure Bilic. Yeah. And it's a game that I stumbled across early last year, and it was a fantastic, very thematic, very atmospheric kind of take on Lovecraftian themes in a sort of a dungeon crawler setting. I find that Lovecraftian themes are often really misrepresented in board games, because there's none of the cosmic horror, there's none of the dread, there's none of the fear and the creeping sense of madness. I think one game that did really well on the digital front was Darkest Dungeon, but generally games like Eldritch Horror and Arkham Horror I don't think capture that, but Machina Arcana did. So I write board game and RPG reviews. It's a guy with a very big dick writing back. And so I wrote a review of it, and a few days later the creator reached out to me, and he said, really like your writing style. We're doing a new expansion. Would you like to be the writer? And I said, shit, yeah. So we started collaborating, and I'm working on a new expansion for the game called To Eternity, which is the second expansion, and it's launching, or it has launched and was successfully funded alongside a third edition of the game. So I'm really excited about that. I was just, and there's an accompanying book that goes with it called the Codex Eternum, and I'm also the author of that. And we're just finishing up the last bits and pieces on it now. It'll be in backers' hands in July. I think you can late pledge until the end of February. But if you're into the Cthulhu mythos and you appreciate a game that steps into the sense of dread rather than like the Tommy gun fedora wearing kind of pulp side of it, it's something that will really resonate with you. And linguistically, a lot of my writing, I can tend to be a little bit verbose, but when you're inspired by Lovecraft, that's fine.
Yeah.
Because he was a bit of a, he was quite fond of his verbiage. So yeah, I'm having a lot of fun with that, and it's been a great experience working with them, and we can't wait to see the finished product. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm gonna check that out. I've actually never heard of it until you said something. I have in my house a game called Mansions of Madness, and it's a half digital, half board game. And that,
Yeah, I have that one too.
yeah, that's a lot of fun. But what you're saying seems a little different, and I'm interested in it. I'm interested in that.
It's
Okay.
darker. Yeah, it's darker.
Then I already like it. So so you launch on the 4th of February. Is there anything else that you want to promote? Any kind of website, any kind of other games, anything like that? The floor is yours, man. Anything you want to say?
um, well, if I don't know if you guys are, if anyone is interested in board game and RPG reviews, they can check out my site www.mongolcult.com, named in honor of Ming the Merciless and the citizens of Mongo. Um, if I have a lot of some of my friends like Ryan, who's working on Pistol Packing Bondage Nuns, he has a new zine called Like Magic, which you should check out. There are, obviously I'm adrift in new content that I'm sifting through at the moment for Zine Quest, and I can't wait to just take my time once they go live and sort through them all and check them out. But I also want to give a shout out to some of the cool indie creators in the tabletop space, whether that be board or RPGs that have resonated with me. And some of my favorites are there's organizations like the Emperors of Eternal Evil, who are creators of the game Cave Evil, Sea Evil, Psycho Raiders. Nate Hayden, top bloke, puts out always interesting stuff. There's Craft Fair Games. Craft Fair Games have some amazing stuff. They have Trash Lords and Ferox, incredible games about cannibals and punching Nazis. Can't go wrong with punching Nazis.
Right about that.
We have like people like Sean Aberg at Goblinko and his Dungeon Degenerates. I mean, I could go on. There's like I was saying earlier, the Necronautilus looks amazing. There's some really good stuff done for the system. Best Left Buried. I really like Patrick Stewart's writing and stuff like Fans of the Earth. Man, I could go through my whole shelf here. Like Games Omnivorous, a company out of Portugal, are doing really good work with their omnivorous scenes, which are one shots with a singular beast and some quite delightfully grim themes. There's just a lot to keep on top of at the moment and try and bring to the table. But even if you don't, it can be really informative just to read through these things and borrow the ideas and hack them into your own campaigns, your own games, your own settings. Like I said, it's a very sort of fertile scene of cross-pollination at the moment, and I love the underground DIY side of it. I love the home cut cards, the little boxes. I like the zine printing. I like that kind of stuff. I mean, the artwork that you get in a lot of the Fantasy Flight games, like you mentioned, or your Wizards of the Coast kind of stuff, it's all very technically proficient, but it's really generic. And it just, I don't know, you can sense the passion in small projects, that engage me in a way that you don't get otherwise. And also, those people need your money more.
Yeah,
So,
yeah,
stay in it. Like, yeah.
Exactly. All right. So before I say goodbye to you, there's a couple things that I want to say too. If you want to know a little bit about the Rollers of Relay, you can see our link tree. It's linktr.ee/Rollers of Relay. Also, Andy, I want to invite you to, if you ever want to join the Discord and play your game on our server, I'm sure we'll have some willing participants that would love to be sexy pistol packing nuns, myself included.
That'd be fucking great. Actually, we'll rope you in for a playtest. How about that?
That sounds great. As long as my baby goes to sleep and the 16-hour time difference doesn't get in the way, I'm sure we can make that happen. Awesome. Another thing too is there is speaking of zines and homegrown initiatives. There's another initiative called 20. I wrote it down because I was going to get it wrong and I already got it wrong.
So that's 28 and 28?
$28, 28 days. And
yeah.
And what that is all these amazing zine creators. If you even donating or backing the project, even $1, so a different project every day in February, just $1 will help the backers either get to their goal, make them part of the Kickstarter has their own, things that they suggest to people, and it helps bump up their goal, bump up their backers, and get more presence on the Kickstarter pages and things like that. I strongly suggest anybody that's listening to this or watching this to be part of that initiative. I have personally made it my goal to do that as well, and also I will be. You can count me as a backer on PPBN FDS for sure.
Outstanding.
Andy, thanks a lot for joining me, man. And I would love to talk to you after everything's settled and the book is out to the presses or whatever they call it. And I'd love to talk to you more about, the finalized process, how you feel about it, the success. I'm sure it's going to be successful. Like I said, based off of the modest goal that you reached or that you set, I think you could reach that in the very first day for sure.
Thank you so much. Thanks, John. Thank you for your time. Thanks for your passion for the scene. And yeah, everybody get on that $28 thing. Check out Rollers Relay. Thanks heaps for your time.
Thanks so much, man. Thanks so much. I'll talk to you later. Thank you.
Take it easy, man. Cheers.
Yep.